Diversity and inclusion continue to grow across the country with demands for corporate America to step in. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings announcing yesterday he'll donate $120 million to historically black colleges.
We're stepping up with this $120 million gift. We want to help draw attention to the HBCUs, to them being part of the solution for America and for black children to aspire to. And so we're so proud, but really the credit is with Dr. Lomax.
And Facebook announcing just now it'll be committing an additional $200 million to black-owned businesses, building on earlier investments. Are actions like this enough? And is it the beginning of a real awakening from corporate America? Here to discuss this and the markets is Shudrawn Thomas, president of Northern Trust Asset Management in Chicago. Shudrawn, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back, Kelly.
What are your reactions to these huge announcements seem to be coming every day now in the hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, it's very encouraging to see it. And I think that really when I think about the things that can be done, it really comes down to three levers. One is inclusion, one is investment, and one is influence. So I think those are the areas that we have to think about if we really want to drive economic inequality or economic equality across communities.
Sure. So the second one, investment, this obviously represents all of these financial commitments. What about inclusion and influence?
Well, if I look at inclusion, if you think about this, 40% of the population is comprised of ethnic minorities. But if you look at C-suite jobs, that's only 13% of those jobs. So first of all, from an inclusion standpoint, you really have to start at the top of these organizations to ensure you have representation that's connected to these communities. If I could touch on investment, because I don't want to get past, while the philanthropy is good, I mean, I myself went to Florida A&M University, which is a historically black university, but you have to combine what I say is the pocketbook and the presence. So what we want to see is those dollars going in, but those firms on campus, recruiting, hiring for full-time jobs, those kind of things really tie together. The last one, influence, is important. If you think about companies, tremendous influence, we yield it all the time. So whether it's through the philanthropy, whether it's through our civic engagement, really tackling issues like inequality that we see in the criminal justice system or the education system, because these tie directly to the bearing of economic equality across communities.
No, that's a great point about having a presence on campus. As you say, simply that awareness sometimes of the industries out there can really help the college students. There's one thing as well that you've done at Northern Trust, which is to set a 10% sort of quota on doing business with some minority-owned brokerage firms. Have you found that to be successful, and do you think companies should consider such initiatives?
It absolutely is. So one of the issues that we have is with companies, oftentimes we will have a charitable intent, but we won't partner with companies. So our commitment to say that we're going to invest with these minority-owned firms where they're doing trading business with us, but beyond that, we also work with firms who are investment managers. This is really important because we're investing in and with these firms. We're making a tangible contribution to the communities that they're part of, and then that economic vitality is flowing through those communities. I really think more companies have to make those kind of commitments.
I want to ask you about the markets more broadly. Obviously, the state of the economy right now has drawn so much concern. I think the Fed chair recently just said that, the best thing we can do to help inequality in this country is to have a strong economy. We saw that with the unemployment numbers before the pandemic. Could be years before we get back. One way to, I guess, ameliorate some of that gap is to try to get more of the minority community involved in the financial markets, but you can't do that at a time when there's mass unemployment. So it's just a very difficult issue.
It is a difficult issue, but one of the things that we can do is we can take action. So just think about what's recently happened with all the stimulus that we've seen encouraged by the government. But if you look at the Paycheck Protection Program, only 12% of the black and Latino-owned firms that actually applied for that stimulus was able to receive it. I think only 5% of the black-owned firms. So again, we have to have more innovation in kind of the mechanisms and even the firms that we use to ensure that these communities can access that vital capital.
Does the rebound in the stock market make sense to you with certain industries back to all-time highs, even as we keep hearing about, another 1.5 million people on jobless benefits?
Yeah, so if I think about what our position has been, When we saw the market at its lows, we actually still were overweight risk. Now, if you've seen the markets improve over time late in May and then again here in June, we've actually reduced our risk exposure. And that's because, again, we're at all-time highs in terms of valuations, and we're also looking at the various risks that go along with reopening. So I think we're very balanced, slightly underweight our risk, and that gives you a sense of what we're thinking about the markets here.
Yeah. And real quickly, Shudrawn, I'm just curious, how did you get into this field? And, you've climbed, right to the top. But was it by happenstance? Did you know from when you were very young this was something that you'd be drawn to? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so started at a very young age with an interest in business and investments. But I will tell you, if it were not for programs like Inroads or the Twigo Foundation, which provided a fellowship for me when I was in business school, I would have never had the kind of access. And that's why I'm so glad to see people investing in these kind of organizations today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming back. Shudrawn Thomas, we appreciate it.